What do you think about intersex people competing against women?
Well, I've said before that I think if you start pulling on this thread about sex and sport, that effectively sport as we know it is going to disappear, and that may, in fact, this may just be our maturation into an adult understanding of human variation. I don't know what to do with intersex people because, they are exceptional, and each one, but the very nature of intersex is that each one is a one-off phenomenon. And,
right.
I'm sympathetic to these people have as much right to live and participate as anyone, but there's no obviously natural way, given the binary nature of sex, to integrate them into sex that is divided by those categories.
Yep.
So it may be that that's bad, but that we have to, in order to preserve sex divided sports, that we have to just accept that there is nothing to be done in that case.
Yeah, it may be. And yet on this question, it's a much murkier question than the question of trans people playing against people of the gender that they now identify with, as opposed to of the sex that they are born to. That is not a murky question, whereas intersex is, in part because intersex can look a lot of different ways, and just that.
Let me ask you this: what about the following rubric?
Yeah.
An intersex person, if they want to compete in men's sports, certainly can. There's no reason to bar anyone, I think, from men's sports if they want to try to compete there.
Well, I've seen an argument. I've said something. I guess I didn't say intersex, but I said, trans men want to compete against men, fine.
Yeah.
Trans women against women, not so much. And I have heard pushback that made me think that for some sports, for something like wrestling, actually, akin to actually one woman soldier in,
right.
At war is really going to change the dynamics of everything. And it's a difficult thing. Like what is the answer? What should you allow? And maybe a trans man wrestling against a bunch of other men is going to throw those men in some way that has nothing to do with sport, but has to do with us being sexual beings, that may render that not fair and not sportsmanlike.
Okay, so let's upgrade the rubric.
Okay,
the rubric is for most sports, anybody who wants to compete in the men's division is free to try out. Some sports are exceptional. Contact sports, let's say. And those who want to compete, who are intersex and want to compete in women's sports, would have to be evaluated by some criteria that suggested that it was actually inappropriate, that, that their right. The female nature of their physiology was.
But that criteria is exactly the point where it's muddy, right? So yes to everything you said, except exactly that criteria, which is
well. But suppose that what you did was you set a standard that ensured that this just did not disadvantage. I don't know what the terminology would be. Women with an uncomplicated.
Natal-born women.
Yeah, natal-born. The problem is I'm stumbling over this because I believe that the nature of intersex is such that there are people in that category who are essentially like native-born women.
Yeah, no, and this is, as much as Anne Fausto Sterling contributed, helped create this complete chaos we're living in right now. As I understand it, her maybe even slightly spoofing original formulation of like there's men and there's women and there's what she was calling hermaphrodites, which is what we call intersex organisms that aren't people, and she was using that word for people, and then she said, and there's female-like hermaphrodites and there's male-like hermaphrodites, thus getting us to the 5 sexes, which of course is not true. There's right. 2 sexes, right? But the actually like really completely equally male and female intersex person is the rarity.
Yeah.
And the different kinds of developmental mistakes that happen that end up rendering a person intersex might leave you much more male or much more female, right?
Right. And in fact, what I'm alluding to though is my understanding, and you tell me if you think I've got it wrong, but that some people who are intersex wouldn't know that they were intersex,
Right.
but for, let's say, a karyotype, a chromosomal test. And my sense is
And that's,
such a person
yes.
probably is perfectly fine and, in fact, totally appropriate to be competing in, sport on whichever side of that boundary.
Depending, right? Like if you appear female and you were raised female and you grew up female and you believe yourself to be female, but you have undescended testicles that are producing testosterone at levels that are higher than, other natal women, and they have been throughout your developmental period as well, that is a tricky situation.
Right. That is a tricky situation. On the other hand, let's say that you are XY female where your SRY gene is defective.
That seems less tricky, frankly.
Right. It's not tricky because effectively you're female in every regard, but two, right? A technical chromosomal issue and a fertility issue.
Exactly. And those reasons, those ways in which you are not female have not affected your development, your anatomy, your physiology, your brain, any of that, so far as we know. But they really seem not to.
Right. And so my interest is when somebody is effectively female and then there's a technical exception to that, I don't want to see them denied access to anything. And I don't think it's necessary to protect anybody else's rights.
I agree.
So I would love to see that covered. Right. But the problem is there is a vast gray area in which rights are jeopardized.
This is part of and I feel like some of it is intentional confusion by the trans rights people. It's like, it's not just the chromosomes. Like no one who thinks about this carefully thought it was the chromosomes at all. The fact is that mammals, like birds, like some other clades, have chromosomal sex determination. But that is quite different from saying that it's the chromosomes that are fundamental to being male or female. Male and female pre-exist sex chromosomes by 100 million years or more.
Yeah, I disagree with you that people don't believe this, though. I think
what do you think I said?
What I think you said is that nobody who thinks about this deeply thinks that the chromosomes are essential. And I think there are lots of people who think about it deeply but don't think evolutionarily deeply, and therefore don't know that the relationship between maleness and femaleness is not fundamentally about chromosomes. Their sense is...
So it's easy to find PhDs in biology who think it's all about the chromosomes, and that's why we have such bafflingly naive but seemingly confused experts, actually confused but naive conversations in which everyone's got their PhD that they can trot out and say, well, an XY female must, proves that the sex isn't binary. It's like, no, it doesn't. It does no such thing.
Right. Which is why the rubric that you've been advocating for is so important, which is that this is actually about gamete size. And that is unambiguous. It's, we have two size gametes. And
not just gametes. So, sessile and large or zippy and small.
Yep.
And, cytoplasm rich, cytoplasm poor.
Right.